Welcome to another edition of Nutmeg Chatter Presents The Claw's Corner. My guest today is jazz bassist Brian Earl Jenkins. He has been taught by some of the greatest jazz musicians and has been a fixture of the New England music scene for over 25 years. Please welcome to the show, Brian Earl Jenkins. Brian, glad to have you on the show.
Hey, Rich, I'm glad to be here, man. It's a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with you. I just got to say that it's great to see you again after so many years. I want to tell everybody out there in Radio Land that me and Rich have been friends for 30 years. We went to high school together. Actually, how long? It's actually been longer than 30 years. We played baseball together as kids, too, right?
It was back in the 80s, so let's go 40 years ago.
Yeah, we're talking 40 years. There's a lot of gray involved now, man.
Yes, because I have not seen you in over 25 years.
Yeah.
So I've been doing radio, and you've been doing so many of your own things, including being a jazz bassist, which I want to talk about because I'm intrigued by that. I know you're very talented. You played with some great musicians. So I want to start with, was music a passion from a very early age?
Yeah, absolutely. I just always gravitated to music, and I mean the first people that I ever heard were, the R&B artists like James Brown that my sisters would play, and Earth, Wind and Fire, and my mom would play a ton of like 60s kind of like instrumental jazz music, and not heavy hard bebop, but I was always, or hard bop, that kind of thing. She always gravitated to the more melodic kind of thing. So I was always hearing music in the house. Whenever she was doing the housework, she'd always have music on, and those old stereos. You remember those old stereos that we had, man, with those big old consoles, those big wooden things with the lid, man.
Very much.
Oh my God, she'd have that thing cranked, and we would and I would just be dancing around the house. She'd be playing the same record over and over again. Those 45s. But yeah, man, it's always been a thing for me. And one thing I remember as a kid, man, was just like, I remember like whenever a record skipped, it would scare me, it would freak me out, and I would just have to run upstairs, run in my room, and put my head under the covers, man, because the record skipped. Still being a little kid, man. But it's always been that. I always listen to the radio, just all that kind of stuff, even long before I started playing.
So it's obvious that you were introduced to many different types of music as a kid. So R&B, jazz, pop music, rock,
right?
Which I think is great because when you have eclectic taste like that, it makes you a much more open-minded person, much broader when you became a musician. So when you're writing your own songs, you have so many different influences. Mm-hmm. Was that a big part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just having it's nothing cognizant. It's nothing that I've ever thought of, really. It's just kind of how it was. I mean, I was living in a middle class neighborhood, working class neighborhood in Woken, Connecticut, and and so I was getting different influences from that. I was getting different influences from my family, that kind of music, R&B and that kind of stuff. But my buddies in the neighborhood were listening to Kiss, and they were, the kids I went to school with. Elementary school, man. They were bringing in Kiss records, and we listened to that. So I was like, man, listen, I like this, man.
Well, back then it was, you wanted the best, you got the best. Yeah, so that was
the
Kiss.
Hottest band in the world,
Kiss.
Right.
So yeah, that was you and I are the same age as we discussed. So I grew up with all those same influences. But
Absolutely.
My father loved rock, my mother loved pop, and I had friends that loved jazz. So I had the same similar influences coming to me, and I just love all the growing up. I'm so glad because I hate when people just stick to one genre because they don't realize how much they're actually missing. There's so many great bands in so many different genres, and if you just limit yourself to one type of music, you really have no idea what you're missing. And that goes with everything in life. It goes with movies, music, art, anything in general. But as a creative person, you have to open up your mind to many different things to be the best you can be, I think.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. That's a perfect point. And just to be a sentient human being, man. Like there's just so many things in the world that just to cordon yourself off to these small little enclaves. It's almost you might as well put yourself in prison in some ways. But listen, I can't knock people who are just hyper focused on one certain thing and become great players and great musicians in that respect, because sometimes you have to like hyper focus in that way to be that great to where some of these guys have gotten to. So I can't knock that particular thing, even especially in that creative field. But as an average listener, I mean, there's just so many things in the world to experience. I mean, just even especially with the advent of the internet and just being able to hear all these different kinds of music that I'm on YouTube a lot and just listening to like music from Morocco and China and just different kinds of things, just to actually see the similarities in a lot of it, and how a lot of the rhythms have migrated and come over throughout time. And obviously we have jazz in this country, which is the mix of African slave songs and European music. So I mean, listen, you have to be open. You have to be able to tolerate a lot of different things, and I feel, and not everybody feels that way, and so I give everyone their due for how they perceive things.
No, I agree. To each their own. What impresses me about you is because most kids either want to be the lead singer, the guitar hero, or a drum aficionado. Why the bass?
Because that's where I always felt that's where my voice was. That's where I thought that I could do the most good within a band structure, right? I never felt like I wanted to be the guy out front singing and running around doing everything. I mean, especially we're as kids being in rock bands and that kind of stuff, and being a guitar player. I mean, there were so many of them, and there were so many guys that were doing it.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, well, I could get into that, but everyone needs a bass player, man, right?
Drums and the bass are the ones that keep
it together.
Yeah, drummers and bassists keep the band together.
Right,
they are the
glue.
rock,
right,
glue. So yeah, every band needs that, even though there may not be the person on stage who's the quote unquote star,
right? But
they're the ones that are keeping everything together.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the way I look at it, man. If you want to take the bed analogy a little bit, a little bit farther, I think of the drums as the frame, and the bass as the mattress.
I like that.
And everybody else is just laying on it.
Never heard it quite put that way, but I do like that analogy.
Yeah, listen. If the drums and bass are working together, listen, you're going to sound good.
Yeah.
As a solo player or whatever, and obviously the piano's there too. The sheets. You know what I mean? So I mean it's that's my particular analogy. I mean obviously I'm a very bizarre individual.
That's why we like you. But you're also very talented.
Oh, thank you.
Who were some of your biggest influences growing up?
Oh God. Well, do you want me to start from influence one?
Influence number one.
My father is my first influence.
Was he a musician?
No. But he was a damn good man.
All right. I'm glad to hear that.
And my mom. I mean, my mother and my father, obviously, that's everyone's first influence.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll put it that way. Now, musically, my first influences were, it's going to sound weird, man, but like the first musical artist that I was kind of gravitating towards was Elvis Presley. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, I loved the way Bill Black played.
Okay.
Am I right? It's Bill Black, right?
I'm pretty sure about
that.
Yeah. I'm not really sure of his backup band because Elvis was Elvis.
Scotty Moore, and
yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, but I love the way he sang too, and just even as a 5-year-old child, like something was there. Obviously we understand about what was going on politically back then. Not to bring up politics, but the mood of the country, things that were going on. Those kind of things, and there's obviously there's a thing about Elvis that's around Elvis that we don't need to get into, but
yeah.
But then and obviously hearing all the music that I was hearing in my house, hearing Parliament Funkadelic and Bootsy and James Brown, that kind of stuff, going to school, and hearing Kiss and that kind of stuff. That's the first thing. That was the very first thing. I mean, as a small child, as I started to become a musician, started to become to be a bass player, I gravitated towards heavier rock. I was starting to listen to like Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, so Steve Harris, Geezer Butler are the guys. As I got older, in my teen years, I started gravitating towards jazz and hearing Stanley Clarke and Jocko and, oh my God, Abraham Laboriel. I mean, jeez. I mean, you want to talk about some bass players, man? There was Jeff Berlin. Oh my God. I mean, just even as a teenager trying to play that stuff on electric bass. I mean, I couldn't hang, but I love to listen to it, and I love to, try to get it. So, and I was playing in rock bands and in the neighborhood and some original stuff in my basement with the guys in my neighborhood who were tremendous. We had great friends. And as time went on, a buddy of mine, not to get ahead of you, I know you have some questions for me, but a buddy of mine was going to Hartt. And he told me about a bass player named Nat Reeves, and he asked me, he's like, "Oh, you think about going to college?" I was like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "Well, you should audition at Hartt and study with this bass player Nat Reeves. He's incredible. You need to get with him." And I decided to audition and apply to University of Hartford and the Hartt School of Music, and and there's a story around that too when I got.
We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more right when we come back with Brian Earl Jenkins on Nutmeg Chatter Presents the Claus Corner. We're going to be returning right after this. And Nutmeg Chatter Presents the Claus Corner is back. I am speaking with the great jazz bassist, Brian Earl Jenkins. Brian, thanks for sticking around. Glad to have you back on the show. So before the break, we were talking about Nat Reeves, who I first saw at the Hartford Jazz Festival over last summer. Oh. And he is a great musician.
He's one of the greatest.
Yes. Now, he was your instructor, is that correct?
Yes, he was. Well, listen, he's always going to be my professor, my teacher. So, and my mentor and everything else in music. He was absolutely tremendous. I wouldn't have been able to do anywhere close to the things I've actually done without him and without his tutelage. And obviously Jackie McLean and Hotep Galetta and everyone at the University of Hartford.
I want to talk about Jackie McLean, because he's another jazz legend. Tell me a little bit about him, because I'm not a jazz aficionado, and some of my listeners would love to know the history behind Jackie, because he has a great history behind him.
Oh my God! Well, Jackie, he's a New York musician. Came up in the era where Charlie Parker was on the scene. So he was a kid, 15, 16 years old, and younger. Walking down and seeing Charlie Parker walk down the street in Harlem and being around all those clubs, not being able to get in, but hearing all that music outside, and he became a tremendous saxophone player, and actually had an incredible career. I mean, if anybody wants to Google him and look online and find all the records he's done with all the people he's done with Art Blakey and obviously his own solo work. I mean, he's a great composer and just one of the most amazing improvisational musicians that really ever lived. And so to be around a man like that is when I look back on it, I can't imagine why I got so lucky to be able to do that, to be able to be in those spots where I was at the time that I was.
Sometimes it's right place, right time, being at the right place at the right time. And luckily for you, you worked with some greats. And for Nat Reeves to approach you and say, you should audition for Hartt Music.
Well, Nat didn't approach me. No. It was a guy that I was playing with who was He was an education major at the university. He was a
okay.
guy from my neighborhood, a buddy of mine that I grew up with.
Okay.
He was going to school there, and he had known Nat because he was going to, because he was actually going to school there, and Nat was the professor there, and he put two and two and said, listen, man, Brian, you should go and you need to be with this guy, and study with him. So like I did, I auditioned, and I put my audition stuff together, and I worked on my Bach etude that I was trying to do on electric bass, and I knew nothing about jazz. I mean, nothing about the kind of jazz that they were teaching. I knew nothing about it at the time. Okay, so you would talk about like a walking bass line or rhythm changes or, like a blues or alternate changes, flat five. I knew nothing of that at the time.
Sometimes that's the best, walking in completely blank, because you're not going to go in there with these preconceived notions like, oh, come on, I learned this way. Instead, you just come in with an open mind and you're willing to be taught how they want to teach you. And it seems like with jazz, it's very improvisational. So they give you some room to be yourself.
Yeah, well, listen, there's always going to be room to be yourself. You have to. You're going to be yourself no matter where you are anyway. But as far as this goes, I mean, it wasn't even that, man. It was like literally, I knew nothing about. All I knew was how to play like rock bass lines and that kind of stuff. I knew nothing really about that kind of music, and I knew really nothing of the artists either. And so I walk in. I did my thing, and I walk into my audition with Jackie, and I didn't know who he was. I mean, so he sits me down, and I'm I start playing my Bach etude and everything. I get halfway through and I just crumble. I mean, it was a disaster, right? I'm like, I'm a skinny, 17-year-old kid, and I'm playing this big red bass, red Yamaha electric I still have, and and so he asked me, he's like, well, what else you got? I was like, okay, well, I learned Satin Doll, and I start playing it, man, like four notes, playing four notes on the same note, you know what I mean? And I kind of get through that, and he's like, all right, son. So he asked me a whole bunch of questions about who I listened to, and I tell him I listen to Geddy Lee and Steve Harris. He's like, I don't know who they are. So he asked me, he said, have you ever heard of Charlie Parker? He's like, I was like, yeah, my mom has a couple records. Yeah. I'm like, I'm starting to crumble because I'm sweating. I know I'm blowing this thing, And so then he asked me, he's like, well, you ever hear of Thelonious Monk? And I'm like, no. He's like, have you ever heard of? Then he asked me, he's like, have you ever heard of Jackie McLean? And I'm like, no. He's like, I'm Jackie McLean.
Just messing with you, isn't he?
No, well, you know what? I mean, he just knew I knew nothing at all. I mean, literally nothing. And
you know what this sounds like? Did you ever see the movie Whiplash with J.K. Simmons?
No.
Miles Turner?
No, I haven't.
Miles Teller. It's a great movie where he wants to be the best jazz drummer in the world.
Yeah.
Buddy Rich is his idol.
Really?
He goes to the school. J.K. Simmons is a former jazz great.
Right.
Now he's an instructor, but he is so hard on all of his students because he wants to push them to be the best.
Yeah.
He said, like, the worst thing that anybody could say is, good job. He wants people to be great.
Right.
And the movie is basically what you just described in real life.
Yeah.
And
wow.
So I think you should check it out. It's called Whiplash,
I will.
starring J.K. Simmons and Miles Teller is the other actor.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you know what? I mean, you're right. I mean, it's like almost like the bigotry of low expectations, right?
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, so after this, he tells me that he's Jackie McLean, and I'm just standing like going, oh my God, I'm mortified, right? Because obviously I didn't do my homework. I didn't do what I should have done. But so I put out my hand, I shake his hand, right? And he just looks at me and he says, you know what? I'm gonna let you in. And I'm like, what? Really? And he's like, yeah, but you're gonna have to work real hard, man. You're gonna have to work real hard, but I'm gonna let you in. I don't know what he saw in me, but he changed my life that day. Absolutely changed my life that day.
Obviously he saw something.
Oh.
Did you ever perform with him?
I was on. Well, I had played in some of the. I never officially performed with him on a job kind of thing,
Yeah.
But I got a chance to be around him a lot over those 4 years that I was there. And the Wednesday morning saxophone class was a staple, man. It was unbelievable. You have 12 saxophone players in this little room, and you have this living legend just spoon feeding them lines and how to play over these changes, and meanwhile we're playing these tempos that are just lightning speed, and that was a great training ground in order to get my chops up in playing the upright bass, because I didn't play the upright bass before I went to school there. I had never seen one in real life.
What do you prefer
now?
Yes.
Well, you know what, I love playing jazz music, and so I think it's hard to say, because I like different things for different reasons, Just like anything else. I mean, what pair of shoes you like the best? Well, I like this pair of shoes to go hiking in, and I like this pair of shoes to go dancing in, So, I mean, I don't know. I think that playing the electric bass is cool, and it has its place, and it has its place in my life. And I love the upright bass. And so, they're two different animals.
Is it much harder to play the stand-up bass than it is the electric bass?
Wow. Like I said, it's two different things.
Two different animals.
Two different things,
When you're playing Iron Maiden, grab the electric bass.
Hey, well,
Jackie
listen,
McLean.
you could play that on the upright bass too. People are doing it.
Oh yeah,
People go on the internet, man. You see cats doing it all the time now.
Sounds great. I love what they're doing now. They're mixing rock with classical music. I just saw one at the Symphony Hall in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
Beatles with a classical band orchestra behind them.
Okay, yeah.
And I also Styx did it. Yngwie Malmsteen did it. That was probably one of my favorites.
Well, Yngwie, he comes out of that. So
yes, he is a master guitar player, and his music is almost like, it's not jazz, but it's so melodic that it goes great with the orchestra.
Right. Well, I mean, that he comes out of a Western classical tradition. Obviously, the music that he plays is influenced by the blues, also.
Yeah.
And so I mean, but it's just like another branch of that blues thing, and the European thing, But his is more towards the European thing in a lot of ways if you listen to it. But man, listen, it's all. I mean, I when I hear that, there's always an element that you can make anything swing. That's what I mean. Jackie told me years ago when I was a kid. I was just at the school. He's like, listen, you know what? Because he knew I was a big rock head, I was a big rock fan, and walking around in the school with Iron Maiden T-shirts on, as a black kid with a bunch of Iron Maiden T-shirts.
Your 3/4 length Quiet Riot T-shirt,
right? Well, I didn't have one of those, but close enough. And he pulled me aside one day. He said, "Listen, you learn this music. He's talking about jazz and hard bop and bebop, and you'll be able to play anything. You'll understand how to play anything else that you want to play." And I took that to heart. I really did, because no one actually affirmed that, like the rock thing that I was hearing, But it wasn't. It was just one of those things. It was like one of those days. Like, listen, you need to learn this. You need to try to learn this and really, really get that under your thing. And so you'll understand. And he was right, too. I mean, I understand much more about those old records that I used to listen to as a teenager than I did then. And I like them more now.
Well, we will be back with jazz bassist Brian Earl Jenkins when Nutmeg Chatter presents The Claw's Corner returns right after this. Nutmeg Chatter presents The Claw's Corner is back. I am speaking with the great jazz bassist, Brian Earl Jenkins. Brian, we're in the last couple minutes of the show already.
Oh, wow.
We have so much to talk about.
Man.
I barely scratched the surface with you.
Wow.
I do want to talk about the Steve Davis Explorers Quartet.
Oh,
From 1994 to 1998, you played with Steve Davis.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
What
absolutely.
was that like?
It was one of the greatest experiences of my life, musically. We were a unit that were playing. We were playing a lot of original music. Steve was just getting his career started, and we were just gung ho to play as hard and as heavy as we could, and just get out there and sweat, man. And we played. We rehearsed a lot, and it was one of those one of those very creative periods of time. I mean, we came out, we had a lot of original music that we played, and some of it still is. I mean, I go back and listen to it once in a while these days, and it's like, wow, that really sounded good, man. You know?
Well, you actually recorded 2 CDs during that time.
Yes,
The
we
Moon
did.
Knows
Yep.
and New Terrain.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
Well, I mean, just be in the studio with these great musicians, you know, Mike DeRubo and Chris Jensen and Tony Leone, who's has a wonderful. All those guys have a wonderful career now. You know, it was, you know, Rich Bolger and just all of these people that we'd all gone to school together. You know, we all known each other for years at that time, and we had an affinity for each other, and we knew. You know, the music that we were playing was worth it, and we put a lot into it, and it was a lot of fun, and it was one of the great periods of time for me. You know,
Can you still find that
I learned
on
a lot.
iTunes?
What's that?
Can you still find that on iTunes and Amazon?
I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure. I haven't really looked for them. I mean, I have them for myself. I have them at home, so I haven't really looked online to see if you. But I think they're still available. Sure.
But anybody who wants to check out Steve Davis and Brian Earl Jenkins can look on either Amazon or iTunes, and hopefully you can find either The Moon Knows and what's the other one?
New Terrain. Yeah.
New Terrain.
You can look. You can find it on. I think you could find them on Steve Davis's website too.
Okay.
And yeah, I think in post you could probably put that. I'm not sure exactly what the address is, but it's Steve Davis, the trombonist.
Okay, we'll look that up.
Yeah.
Now, you're an instructor.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
What advice do you give to up-and-coming musicians?
Practice and listen, and be open.
Yeah, well, one of my
And
favorite quotes...
actually be yourself, and not be afraid to be yourself.
Exactly. I love that. And one of my favorite quotes is from Frank Zappa. He said, "The mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open." I love that quote.
Frank was a genius, man.
Yes, Frank was great. And he is kind of a jazz musician in a way. The things that he did, not all of it. There was rock, obviously.
Frank
but
is an all-around music. Frank is just Frank.
Yeah.
I mean,
you have like rock, jazz, pop.
He covered
and
the
Zappa.
gamut. Yeah.
Yeah. He's his own genre.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
What I like about you, because you like rock and jazz.
Sure.
So you've done a mixture of both, which we're going to hear on the show. And one of the songs you did was Black Sabbath's "Sign of the Southern Cross."
Sure. Yeah.
That was a great combination.
Well, it was just one of those tunes I really loved a lot, man. I've always been a big fan of Black Sabbath and Ronnie James Dio and that kind of thing, and so I just heard that melody, you know, and it's haunting when you listen to it, and you get the visual of just being lost at sea, you know. And it's just a tremendous song, and I wanted to do something with that tune that would kind of be indicative of that, you know.
For me, my favorite era of Black Sabbath is the Dio years. I love the Heaven and Hell era.
Sure.
And I
Those
think
two
a great
records.
song that you could put together, jazz and rock, would be "Children of the Sea."
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think that is a great song on its own.
Sure.
When you put a little jazz in it, I think that would be. So hopefully maybe next time you can come back on, we can hear a little version of "Children of the Sea," Brian Earl Jenkins style.
That's right. Well, you know what? Maybe you could write the arrangement for me, man. When it's coming out of your head, right?
I can't believe it's already been a half hour, Brian.
Oof, man, it goes quick, don't it?
I have to have you back because I have so many more questions, and I know you have many more answers to give me.
Really? You think
Yes,
so?
I do. I really do.
No one said I was quiet, man.
30 years and 30 minutes, folks.
Hey, it's a great. Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely.
That wraps up another edition of Nutmeg Chatter presents the Claw's Corner. I would like to thank my guest, jazz great Brian Earl Jenkins, for coming on the show to share his knowledge and tell some great stories. I would also like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in every week. Enjoy your day, everyone.